Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Haven's Rest defense station, watching the morning sun rise over the golden wheat fields below. The sight never got old. 3 years ago, this had been nothing but empty grassland on a frontier world. Now, it was home to 50,000 people who had left Earth looking for peace and a better life. Jake sipped his coffee and checked his watch. Another quiet morning on patrol duty. The most exciting thing that had happened in months was when old Pete Wilson's cattle had broken through a fence and wandered into the spaceport. Jake smiled at the memory. This was exactly the kind of boring he had hoped for when he took this job. His radio crackled to life. "Captain Morrison, we're picking up some strange readings on the long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from the Communications Center. Jake walked over to the comm panel. "What kind of readings, Amy?" "Multiple contacts coming in fast? From the outer system. They're not responding to our identification requests." Jake felt his stomach tighten. In 3 years, they had never had unscheduled visitors. Haven's Rest was too far from the main shipping lanes for casual traffic. "How many contacts?" 12 ships, sir. Maybe more. They're moving in formation." Jake set down his coffee cup and headed for the command center. As he walked through the corridors of the small station, he tried to stay calm. It could be anything. Maybe a merchant convoy that had gotten lost. Maybe even a military patrol from Earth Command. But deep down, he knew better. He reached the command center just as Amy was putting the sensor data on the main screen. Jake looked at the display and felt his blood turn cold. 12 ships in tight formation, moving fast and direct toward Haven's Rest. No merchant convoy flew like that. No human military unit would approach a colony without announcing themselves. "Amy, sound the general alarm. Get everyone to the shelters." "Sir, maybe we should try to contact them again first." "Do it now," Jake snapped. The alarm began wailing across the colony. Jake had run dozens of drills, but this was the first time the alarm meant real danger. Through the station's windows, he could see people in the fields below dropping their tools and running toward the underground shelters that had been built into every major building. "Sir, I'm getting a partial identification on the ships," Amy reported, her voice tight with worry. "They're Zephyrian." Jake cursed under his breath. The Zephyrians were bad news. Bird-like aliens with a reputation for raiding isolated settlements. They took slaves and valuable cargo, then disappeared back into the deep space between star systems. But they usually targeted mining operations or industrial colonies. Haven's Rest was just a farming world. "How long until they reach us?" Jake asked. 20 minutes, sir." Jake looked around the command center. His entire defense force consisted of 15 people and 6 small patrol ships. The patrol ships were barely armed and designed for chasing smugglers, not fighting a real military force. Against 12 Zephyrian raiders, they wouldn't last 5 minutes. "Amy, get me a channel to Earth Command." "Priority 1 emergency signal." "Yes, sir." Jake grabbed the microphone as Amy opened the channel. "Earth Command, this is Captain Morrison. At Haven's Rest Colony, we are under attack by Zephyrian raiders. 12 hostile ships inbound. We need immediate assistance. Repeat, Haven's Rest is under attack." The radio crackled with static. Earth Command was 6 days away at best. Even for their fastest ships, Jake knew no help was coming in time. "Sir, the raiders are entering orbit," Amy reported. Through the command center's main window, Jake could see bright flashes of light in the sky as the Zephyrian ships began their descent. The colony's few defensive guns opened fire, but their shots went wild. The raiders came down like angry wasps, fast and unpredictable. The first explosion shook the ground. Jake watched helplessly as the raiders hit the power station, plunging half the colony into darkness. Smoke rose from a dozen fires across the settlement. "Amy, are the civilians in the shelters?" "Most of them, sir, but the school was still evacuating." When the attack started, Jake's heart jumped. The school held over 200 children. "Where are they now?" The teachers were moving them to the community center. It has the strongest shelter in the colony. Jake grabbed his sidearm and headed for the door. "Keep trying to reach Earth Command. If I don't make it back, make sure they know what happened here." Jake ran through the corridors of the station and down to the ground level. Outside, the air was thick with smoke and the sound of energy weapons. He could see Zephyrian soldiers moving through the streets. They were tall and thin, with feathered heads and sharp beaks. Their movements were quick and jerky, like the birds they resembled. But something was wrong. The Zephyrians weren't acting like typical raiders. They weren't breaking into houses or loading stolen goods into their ships. Instead, they seemed to be herding people toward the center of town. Jake made his way carefully through the burning streets, staying in the shadows. He could hear screaming and shouting, but also something else. The Zephyrians were making strange, clicking sounds to each other, almost like they were following a plan. He reached the community center just as a group of Zephyrian soldiers was forcing the last of the children outside. Jake's blood turned to ice as he saw what was happening. The aliens weren't interested in the adults. They were separating the children from their parents and loading them into transport vehicles. Jake saw a little Ben Carter, Amy's 8-year-old nephew, being pushed into a transport along with Lisa Park and Tommy Rodriguez. 6-year-old Emma Davis was crying for her mother as a Zephyrian soldier picked her up and carried her toward another vehicle. Jake raised his weapon, but there were too many of them. He was one man with a pistol against dozens of armed aliens. If he started shooting, he might hit one of the children. He watched in horror as transport after transport filled with human children drove toward the Zephyrian landing ships. The aliens worked quickly and efficiently, like they had done this many times before. In less than 3 hours, it was over. The Zephyrian ships lifted off, leaving behind burning buildings and devastated families. Jake made his way back to the command center, where Amy was still trying to reach Earth Command. "Did you get through?" Jake asked. Amy nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, sir. I told them everything." Jake looked at the list Amy had compiled. 127 children between the ages of 4 and 16. Gone. Jake picked up the microphone one more time. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking with rage. "Earth Command, this is Captain Morrison at Haven's Rest. The raiders have withdrawn. They took our children. All of them. 127 human children have been abducted by Zephyrian slavers." He paused, then added the words that would echo across human space within hours. "They took our children." Admiral Patricia Wells was eating breakfast in her quarters on Luna Station when the emergency message arrived. The red light on her communication panel flashed 3 times, then stayed solid. Priority 1, emergency. She had only seen that signal twice in her 20-year career. She pressed the button, and Captain Morrison's voice filled the room. "Earth Command, this is Captain Morrison at Haven's Rest Colony. We are under attack by Zephyrian raiders." Patricia set down her coffee cup and listened to the full message. When she heard the words, "They took our children," she felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had 2 children of her own, both grown now and serving in the fleet. But she remembered what it felt like to tuck them into bed each night, to worry when they were sick, to love them more than her own life. Patricia pressed her come button. Emergency council meeting. All department heads to conference room Alpha in 15 minutes. She dressed quickly in her uniform and walked through the corridors of Luna Station. Other officers she passed looked worried. Word was already spreading through the station's communication networks. By the time she reached the conference room, the other members of the Human Defense Council were already there. General Robert Hayes from the Marine Corps was reading the full report on his tablet. His face was stone, but Patricia could see the anger in his eyes. 127 children, he said quietly. The oldest was 16. The youngest was 4. Admiral Susan Clark from the Intelligence Division looked up from her screen. "We're getting confirmation from other sources. The Zephyrians hit fast and hard. They knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't a random raid." Patricia took her seat at the head of the table. "Options. We mobilize everything," General Hayes said immediately. "Every ship, every Marine, every weapon we have. We find those children and we bring them home." Admiral Clark nodded. "I agree, but we need to be smart about this. Zephyrians are nomads. They don't have fixed bases. They could be anywhere in a dozen star systems by now." Patricia looked around the table. Every face showed the same expression. Anger, determination, and something else. something cold and deadly that she had never seen before in a council meeting. "We vote," Patricia said. "All in favor of full mobilization?" Every hand went up. Motion carried. "Susan, I want every intelligence asset we have looking for those ships. Robert, start pulling our forces together. Want 200 ships minimum." As the meeting broke up, Patricia's aide handed her another message. This one was from an unexpected source. She read it twice to make sure she understood it correctly. The message was from the Mantori Queen, leader of the insect-like aliens who controlled a large section of space near human territory. The Mantori were not friends of humanity. They were not enemies either, but they had their own strange ways. The message was short and written in broken human language. "Admiral Wells, we hear of child taking. Even we who eat our own young when food is scarce know that human offspring are sacred to your kind. The bird people have signed their death papers. We will not interfere with your hunt." Patricia stared at the message. The Mantari Queen was right. Among humans, children were sacred. Every human adult would die to protect a child, even a stranger's child. It was built into their DNA, their culture, their souls. Over the next 6 hours, more messages arrived. Collective, who normally stayed out of all conflicts, sent an official notice that they were cutting all trade with the Zephyrian Empire. The Helix never took sides in anything. Their decision would hurt the Zephyrians badly. Even more surprising was the message from the Korath Empire. The Korath were warriors who had fought humans in 3 separate wars. They respected strength and honor above all else. Their war speaker's message was simple. The bird people fight like cowards. The Korath will not stand with cowards. Patricia realized something important was happening. The other alien races were not just staying neutral. They were taking sides against the Zephyrians. Word of the child's abduction was spreading through the galaxy, and everyone understood what it meant. Lieutenant Amy Carter arrived on Luna Station 36, hours after the attack. She had volunteered for the rescue mission and demanded to be part of the planning. Patricia met with her in private. "Tell me everything you saw," Patricia said. Amy sat stiffly in her chair. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "They knew exactly what they were doing, Admiral. Didn't want supplies or weapons or adults for slaves. They only wanted the children. They had special transport vehicles, just the right size. They had lists of names. This was planned." "Lists of names?" "Yes, ma'am. I saw one of their soldiers checking something that looked like a data pad. He was calling out names and checking them off. They knew who they were looking for." Patricia felt her anger grow colder and more focused. This was not a crime of opportunity. This was planned, organized kidnapping of human children. Admiral Amy continued, "My nephew Ben was one. Of the children they took, he's 8 years old. He likes to build model spaceships and he's afraid of the dark. I need to be on that rescue mission." Patricia looked at the young officer. Amy Carter had just lost her nephew to alien kidnappers, but she was not falling apart. She was asking to be part of the solution. "You're assigned to Task Force Vengeance as intelligence coordinator," Patricia said. "We'll find him, Lieutenant. We'll find all of them." The fleet came together faster than anyone had thought possible. Ships were pulled from patrol duties across human space. Reserve units were called up. Even civilian cargo ships volunteered. To carry supplies, the flagship was the USS Constitution, the newest and most powerful ship in the human fleet. Patricia moved her command to the Constitution and began planning the hunt. Captain Lisa Brooks came aboard with her destroyer, the USS Ranger. She brought news from the outer colonies. "The word is spreading, Admiral. Every human settlement in the galaxy knows what happened. They're all asking the same question. What are we going to do about it?" Patricia looked out the window of her. Ready room at the growing fleet. 200 ships and growing, Marines, pilots, engineers, medical staff, all volunteers. All angry. "We're going to find those children," she told Captain Brooks. "And then we're going to make sure this never happens again." 3 days after the attack on Haven's Rest, Task Force Vengeance left Earth space. Patricia stood on the bridge of the Constitution and watched the other ships form up around her flagship. She had never commanded a fleet this large. She had never felt responsibility this heavy, but she had also never felt more certain of her mission. Somewhere out there, 127 human children were scared and alone. They were depending on adults they had never met to come and save them. Patricia would not let them down. The hunt was about to begin. Task Force Vengeance had been hunting for 2 weeks when they found their first target. The USS Ranger was on patrol near the Kepler system when Captain Lisa Brooks spotted something on her sensors. Contact bearing 27 Mark for her tactical officer reported. It's a Zephyrian mining station. Lisa looked at the data on her screen. Station was small, probably only a few hundred aliens working there. In normal times, the human fleet would have avoided it or maybe sent a diplomatic message asking about suspicious ship movements. These were not normal times. All ships, this is Captain Brooks. We have a Zephyrian target, moving to attack. Lisa's orders from Admiral Wells were clear. Every Zephyrian installation was to be destroyed. Every Zephyrian ship was to be captured or eliminated. There's no exceptions. No mercy. The mining station never had a chance. The USS Ranger hit it with everything she had. Energy weapons tore through the station's weak shields. Missiles blasted apart the mining equipment and living quarters. In 15 minutes, the station was a cloud of debris and escaping atmosphere. Lisa watched the destruction on her main screen. She felt no satisfaction, no regret. This was just the beginning. Captain, we're detecting escape pods, her sensor operator said. Tractor them in. We need prisoners for questioning. The interrogation took place in the Ranger's detention bay. Commander Steve Walsh was good at getting information from unwilling sources. The Zephyrian prisoners were scared and confused. They kept asking why the humans were attacking civilian targets. Steve did not explain. He just asked questions. Where? Are the human children? Which Zephyrian ships took them? The first prisoner claimed he knew nothing. Steve moved to the next one. The second prisoner also said he knew nothing. By the fourth prisoner, Steve was getting angry. Listen carefully, he told the trembling Zephyrian. Your people took human children. 127 of them, you were going to tell me where they are, or I am going to let you talk to some of the parents who are looking for their kids. The Zephyrian's feathers stood up in fear. I swear on my Nestinor, I know nothing about human children. I work in the mines. I extract crystals from rocks. That is all? Steve believed him. Most Zephyrians probably did not know about the raid on Haven's Rest, but someone knew. Someone had planned it and ordered it and profited from it. Where is your main slave processing center? Steve asked. Zephyr Prime, the prisoner said quickly. All captured beings go to Zephyr Prime first. But I swear, we have taken no humans recently. Steve sent the information to Admiral Wells on the Constitution. Within hours, the entire task force was moving toward Zephyr Prime. The Zephyrian homeworld was heavily defended. Orbital platforms surrounded the planet like a ring of thorns. A fleet of 50 warships guarded the approaches. Admiral Wells looked at the tactical display and made her decision. All ships, attack formation. We go in hard and fast. The battle for Zephyr Prime lasted 8 hours. The human ships fought with a fury that shocked the Zephyrian defenders. Captain Danny Pierce rammed his battlecruiser USS Thunderbolt into a Zephyrian space station when his weapons were damaged. The explosion took out 3 enemy ships. The orbital defenses were destroyed. Admiral Wells sent marine landing parties to the planet's surface. They found the slave processing centers, large compounds where captured beings were held before being sold to buyers across the galaxy. Lieutenant Amy Carter led one of the search teams through the compounds. She saw thousands of beings from dozens of different species, all kept in cages like animals. She saw the fear in their eyes, the hopelessness of creatures who had been stolen from their homes and families, but she did not find human children there. Not here, Amy reported to Admiral Wells. We've searched every facility on the planet, no human children. Admiral Wells felt her anger grow colder. The Zephyrians were moving the children, hiding them, but where? The answer came from an unexpected source. A captured Zephyrian officer. Faced with the choice between talking and being handed over to the human Marines, decided to cooperate. The Special cargo was moved 3 days ago, he said. High-value items go to Crockish for the premium auctions. Amy felt her blood turn to ice. Premium auctions? Crockish is a fortress world. It's very secure, very private. Its buyers come from across the galaxy for rare and valuable slaves. Admiral Wells studied the star charts. Crockish was deep in Zephyrian space, protected by their most powerful fleet. It was considered impossible to attack. Admiral Captain Morrison said over the com from his position with the intelligence team, "We're intercepting Zephyrian communications. They're talking about a special auction in 5 days, something they call young warriors from the aggressive species." Amy closed her eyes. The Zephyrians were not just selling human children as slaves. They were advertising them as something special, something valuable, because they came from a warrior race. "How long to reach Crockish?" Admiral Wells asked her navigation officer. "For days at maximum speed," Admiral Wells looked around the bridge of the Constitution. Her officers were waiting for orders. They all knew what Crockish meant. It was a suicide mission. The fortress world had never been successfully attacked. "Set course for Crockish. Maximum speed, Admiral," Captain Brooks said over the com. "The fleet can't take those defenses. We'll lose half our ships before we even reach the planet." Wells thought about 127 human children, scared and alone on a fortress world, about to be sold to the highest bidder. She thought about parents back on Haven's Rest who were praying their children would come home. "Then we lose half our ships," she said. "But we get those children back." As Task Force Vengeance raced toward Crockish, word of their approach spread through the galaxy. The Zephyrian High Command sent urgent messages to their allies asking for help defending their fortress world. Most of the replies were the same. "We cannot help you. The humans are too angry. Should not have taken their children." The Montari Queen sent a message directly to Admiral Wells. "We will not interfere, but we offer this advice. Human parents, protecting their young, are the most dangerous force. In the galaxy, the bird people will learn this soon." On the bridge of the Constitution, Admiral Wells watched the stars stream past as they traveled at maximum speed toward Crockish. She knew this might be a one-way trip. The Zephyrian defenses were strong, and her fleet was already damaged from the fighting at Zephyr Prime. But she also knew something the Zephyrians did not understand. Every human in her fleet would die before they let those children be sold as slaves. Every officer, every pilot, every Marine was fighting not just for military objectives, but for something deeper and more powerful. They were fighting for the future of the human race. They were fighting for children who called them mommy and daddy. They were fighting for the right of human families to exist without fear. Lieutenant Amy Carter stood in the Marine briefing room, checking her equipment for the assault on Crockish. Around her, other Marines were doing the same. Nobody talked about the odds of survival. Nobody mentioned that they were about to attack the most heavily defended world in Zephyrian space. Instead, they talked about the children, 8-year-old Ben Carter, who liked to build model spaceships; 6-year-old Emma Davis, who was afraid of the dark; Tommy Rodriguez, who wanted to be a pilot when he grew up. Amy looked at the photo she carried of Ben, taken at his last birthday party. He was smiling and holding a toy spaceship, chocolate cake on his face. "We're coming, Ben," she whispered. "Just hold on a little longer." Task Force Vengeance reached the edge of the Crockish system 12 hours ahead of schedule. Admiral Wells looked at the tactical display showing the massive Zephyrian defenses and made her final preparations. The most important battle in human history was about to begin. Crockish was a nightmare world built for war. The planet was covered in thick metal armor that could stop even the biggest weapons. Massive defense platforms floated in orbit like deadly moons. Energy shields created a glowing barrier around the entire system. Admiral Patricia Wells stood on the bridge of the USS Constitution and looked at the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet guarding Crockish was 3 times larger than her own force. Hundreds of enemy ships were arranged in perfect battle formations. It was the most powerful defense she had ever seen. "Admiral, we're detecting ships from other species as well," reported her sensor officer. "Looks like buyers here for the auction." Patricia felt sick. Criminal organizations from across the galaxy had come to bid on human children. They thought they were safe behind Krokusha's defenses. "Ships, prepare for attack," Patricia ordered. The first wave of Zephyrian ships came at them like angry wasps. Energy beams lit up space as the two fleets crashed together. The USS Ranger, commanded by Captain Lisa Brooks, took heavy damage but kept fighting. Her ship's hull was torn open in 3 places, but her weapons were still firing. Captain Danny Pierce brought his battlecruiser USS Thunderbolt right into the middle of the enemy formation. "For the children of Haven's Rest," shouted over the cum as his ship's guns blazed away at everything around him. The battle was chaos. Ships exploded in bright flashes. Debris flew through space. The human fleet was outnumbered, but they fought with a fury that scared their enemies. Every human ship that was destroyed took at least 2 Zephyrian vessels with it. Lieutenant Amy Carter watched the battle from the marine transport ship USS Guardian. She and her assault team were waiting for their chance to land on the planet. Surface. Around her, 50 Marines checked their weapons and equipment. They all knew this was probably a one-way mission. "Listen up," Amy told her team. "Intelligence says the children are being held in Bunker Complex 7, about 20 kilometers from the main landing zone. The bunkers are carved into solid rock and built to survive planetary bombing. We're going to have to fight our way in room by room." Sergeant Mike Taylor, a veteran of 3 alien wars, raised his hand. "Lieutenant, what if the Zephyrians try to use the children as human shields?" Amy's face went cold. "Then we make sure none of the Zephyrians live long enough to try." Above them, the space battle raged on. USS Constitution took a direct hit from a Zephyrian dreadnought. The flagship shook like it was going to break apart, but Admiral Wells kept giving orders. "Damage report," she called out. "Hull breach. On decks 7 through 9, you've lost primary weapons control. Engineering is trying to reroute power." Patricia looked at the tactical display. Half her fleet was gone or badly damaged. The Zephyrian defenses were still strong, but they had created a gap in the enemy lines, just big enough for the marine transports to get through. All assaults. "Ships, go now. Get those Marines to the surface." The USS Guardian and 5 other transport ships dove toward the planet. Zephyrian fighters chased them, firing missiles and energy beams. 2 of the transports exploded before they reached the atmosphere. The Guardian was hit twice, but kept flying. Amy felt the ship shaking as they entered Krokusha's atmosphere. Through the small windows, she could see the planet's surface rushing up to meet them. Gray metal buildings and defense towers covered the landscape like mechanical cancer. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot called out. Amy stood up and faced her Marines. "Remember, we're not here to win a war. We're here to bring children home to their families. Every second we waste is another second those kids are scared and alone." The Guardian hit the ground hard. The landing ramp dropped and Amy led her team out into the alien world. The air was thick and smelled like metal and chemicals. In the distance, she could see the dark entrance to Bunker Complex 7. Zephyrian ground forces were already moving to stop them. Energy weapons lit up the gray landscape as the battle began. Amy's Marines spread out and advanced toward the bunker complex, fighting from cover to cover. The Zephyrian soldiers were good fighters, but they were not prepared for human Marines, who were fighting to save children. Amy watched Sergeant Taylor charge a machine gun position alone when his squad was pinned down. He took 3 hits but kept going until he reached the enemy position and destroyed it with grenades. "Lieutenant Carter, this is Corporal Jenkins," came a voice over the radio. "We've found the entrance to the bunker complex. It's heavily defended." Amy looked at the massive metal doors built into the side of a mountain. Energy shields covered the entrance. Guard towers on both sides were firing down at her Marines. "We need explosives," Amy said. "Lots of them." The assault on the bunker entrance took 2 hours. Amy's Marines fought like demons, but the Zephyrian defenses were strong. Finally, Sergeant Taylor managed to get close enough to plant demolition charges on the shield generators. The explosion shook the ground for kilometers. When the smoke cleared, the entrance to Bunker Complex 7 was open. Amy led her remaining Marines into the underground maze. The corridors were narrow and dark. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the metal walls. They could hear sounds echoing from deeper in the complex. Alien voices, mechanical noises, and something else. Children crying. "This way," Amy whispered. Following the sound, they fought through 3 levels of defenders. The Zephyrians had turned every corridor into a trap, every room into a fortress. But the human Marines kept going. Nothing was going to stop them from reaching those children. Amy reached a heavy door marked with alien symbols. Through the metal, she could hear human voices, young voices speaking English. "Ben!" she called through the door.
Ben Carter?
"You hear me, Aunt Amy?" came a small voice from the other side. "Aunt Amy, is that really you?" Amy felt tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Ben, it's me. We're here to take you home." She placed explosive charges on the door locks. "Everyone get back from the door," she shouted to the children inside. The door exploded inward. Amy rushed into the room and saw them. 18 human children, dirty and scared but alive. Ben. Carter ran to her and threw his arms around her waist. Emma Davis was there, and Tommy Rodriguez, and dozens of others. But Amy could see the empty spaces where other children should have been. 38 children were missing. "Where are the others?" she asked Ben. Ben's face went dark. The bird people took them to another room. They were doing tests on them. Bad tests. Amy felt rage fill her heart like fire. She spoke into her radio. "Command, this is Carter. We have 89 children secured, requesting immediate evacuation." "Negative, Carter," came Admiral Wells' voice. "The space battle is still going on. We need another hour to secure an evacuation route." Amy looked at the children around her. They were safe for now, but she knew the Zephyrians would try to take them back. And somewhere in this bunker complex, 38 other human children were being tortured by alien scientists. "Listen to me," she told her Marines. "We hold this position no matter what. We find the rest of our kids." Sergeant Taylor nodded. "What are your orders, Lieutenant?" Amy checked her weapon and looked toward the deeper levels of the bunker complex. "We keep fighting. We don't stop until every human child is free." Above them, the battle for Krockish continued to rage. Admiral Wells watched her fleet fight against impossible odds, knowing that everything depended on Amy Carter and her Marines. The children of Haven's Rest were almost home, but the hardest fighting was still ahead. Lieutenant Amy Carter found the laboratory 3 levels deeper in the bunker complex. The door was marked with symbols that made her sick to look at. Through the small window, she could see bright lights and metal tables. She placed explosive charges on the door and stepped back. "Everyone ready?" Her Marines nodded. They had been fighting for 6 hours straight. Half of them were wounded, but they were not stopping now. The door exploded inward. Amy rushed into the room and stopped. What she saw there would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. 38 human children lay on metal tables connected to alien machines. Some were awake and crying, others were unconscious. Zephyrian scientists in white coats stood around them, taking notes on electronic tablets. Amy raised her weapon. "Step away from the children." Now, the lead scientist, an old Zephyrian with gray feathers, turned to face her. "You do not understand, human. We are studying what makes your species so aggressive. These young ones will help us create better warriors." Amy shot him without hesitation. The other scientists scattered as her Marines flooded into the room. "Get the children off those machines," Amy ordered. Carefully, Sergeant Taylor worked to free a 10-year-old girl named Sarah Kim. "Lieutenant, some of these kids are in bad shape. They need medical attention immediately." Amy looked at the children as her Marines freed them from the alien equipment. Some had strange marks on their skin where needles had been inserted. Others seemed confused and scared. But they were alive. "Ben, help me with the younger ones," Amy said to her nephew. Ben Carter had stayed close to her during the fighting, refusing to be evacuated with the other rescued children. Together they helped 6-year-old Emma Davis off one of the tables. The little girl was crying and asking for her mother. "So, Emma," Amy said softly, "we're taking you home to your family." Amy's radio crackled. "Carter, this is Admiral Wells. What's your status?" "We have all the children, Admiral, but some are hurt. We need medical evacuation immediately." "Understood. Space battle is won. Evacuation ships are on their way." Amy looked around the laboratory one more time. Charts on the walls showed human anatomy with notes in the Zephyrian language. Computer screens displayed data about human genetic codes and brain chemistry. The aliens had been trying to understand what made humans such effective fighters. Admiral Amy said into her radio, "You need to see what we found down here. The Zephyrians weren't just planning to sell our children as slaves. They were experimenting on them." There was a long silence on the radio. When Admiral Wells spoke again, her voice was ice cold. "Get those children to safety, Lieutenant. We'll discuss the rest later." The evacuation took 4 hours. Medical ships arrived to care for the injured children. Transport vessels carried the others back to the human fleet. Amy watched as Ben Carter and Emma Davis and all the others were loaded onto ships that would take them home to their families. But she also watched as 38 small bodies were carried to a different ship. 38 children who would never go home. 38 families who would never be whole again, Admiral. Wells stood on the bridge of the USS Constitution and watched Crockish burn. Her fleet had won the battle, but the cost had been terrible. Half her ships were destroyed or badly damaged. Thousands of human sailors and Marines were dead, but they had saved 89 children. They had discovered something that changed everything, Admiral Captain Morrison said, approaching with a data tablet. "We've analyzed the information from the Zephyrian laboratory. This wasn't just about Haven's Rest. They had plans to raid 12 other human colonies. They wanted to collect hundreds of human children for their experiments." Patricia felt her anger grow beyond anything she had ever experienced. The attack on Haven's Rest was not random. It was part of a larger plan to kidnap human children and use them as test subjects. "Give me a channel to the Zephyrian High Command." She ordered. The alien leaders appeared on her main screen a few minutes later. Emperor Vokish himself was among them, his golden feathers marking him as the supreme ruler of the Zephyrian Empire. "Admiral Wells," Emperor Vokish said in his scratchy voice, "we are prepared to negotiate the return of your remaining young ones, an appropriate compensation for this unfortunate incident." Patricia stared at him for a long moment. "There are no remaining children, Emperor. We found them all. 38 of them were dead, killed by your scientists during their experiments." The Zephyrian leaders looked uncomfortable. Emperor Vokish cleared his throat. "Regrettable losses during scientific research. We offer to pay compensation and promise such incidents will not happen again." Patricia's voice was deadly quiet. "You have 72 hours to surrender. Every individual involved in the planning and execution of the raids on human settlements. You will also pay reparations equal to your empire's total economic output for 1 full year. If you refuse, we will eliminate your entire species." The Zephyrians looked shocked. "Admiral, surely you do not mean to threaten genocide over a few lost young ones?" I mean exactly what I said. You have 72 hours. Patricia cut the communication and turned to her officers. "Send messages to every human colony and every human ship. Tell them what we found in that laboratory. Tell them the Zephyrians were planning to raid more settlements and take more children." Within hours, the news spread through human space like wildfire. The reaction was immediate and universal. Every human military unit in the galaxy began moving towards Zephorian territory. Colony defense forces mobilized. Even civilian ships loaded with armed volunteers headed for the front lines. The Zephyrian High Command tried to negotiate. They offered to return fictional children they claimed to still have. They promised never to attack humans again. Begged for mercy and understanding. Patricia's response was broadcast across the galaxy. "You had your chance for mercy when you chose not to harm our children. That chance is gone." The systematic destruction of the Zephyrian Empire took 3 months. Every military base, every government building, every ship in their fleet was destroyed. The humans offered safe passage to civilian Zephyrians who surrendered. But anyone connected to the government or military was hunted down. Captain Morrison led the final assault on the Zephyrian capital world. Emperor Vokish and his entire court were captured and brought before a human military tribunal. The trial was broadcast live across the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming. Plans for raids on human colonies, scientific data from experiments on human children, orders from the highest levels of government to continue the program. The sentences were death for everyone involved. Executions were carried out immediately. Patricia stood in the cemetery on Haven's Rest Colony 6 months later. Small headstones marked the graves of children who would never grow up. Parents and families stood quietly among the graves, finally able to say goodbye. Amy Carter was there with her nephew Ben. The boy had recovered from his ordeal, but he still had nightmares. Still asked questions about why the aliens had taken him and his friends. Will other aliens try to hurt human children again? Ben asked his aunt. Amy looked around at the memorial garden. Then she looked up at the sky, where patrol ships from a dozen human fleets kept constant watch. No, Ben, she said quietly. But they won't. Every alien in the galaxy knows what happens to anyone who hurts human children now. Across the galaxy, alien children did indeed sleep safer in their beds. The destruction of the Zephyrian Empire had sent a message that echoed through every star system. There were beings in the universe. It's more dangerous than monsters or tyrants or conquerors. There were angry human parents, and nothing in the galaxy was more terrifying than that.